Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Can we have the traditional versus modern? So we'll come to our breakout sessions of yesterday now. You had 2 breakout sessions. In one session, you identified the main issues that you feel the Grihastha Ashram faces in general. And in the second breakout session, you identified what traditional family life meant and also what modern family life meant. Yesterday, we briefly discussed a few issues, a few points regarding some of the issues that face the Grihastha Ashram. And before we continue with the remaining issues that all of you had highlighted, let's, for some time, discuss the results of the other breakout session. That is the traditional versus modern family life. Now, we try to assess all your suggestions and we try to distill it into some common points that were there everywhere. We hope we've not missed out anything. If there's anything specific, it's mostly included in some of the categories there. So, in the traditional family life, what many of you felt were the plus points, we'll identify. What were the cons or the minus points also we'll list out. Similarly for the modern family life also. So for traditional family life, one of the main things that everybody felt was that this basically indicates a joint family system. And then there's unity. There are traditions, customs and values, including dress codes and many other things that are part of such a traditional family life. For any individual member of the family, there is a support system, there is stability, there is security. There is also bonding between the different family members because they're all staying together, living together, eating together. So there is a certain bond that develops that is quite strong. Then there is also delegation of responsibilities, division of work, clear definition of roles. So for example, the cooking in the house, the cleaning of the house, the running of the business, all the different functions that pertain to the family are all divided. It is clear who is supposed to do what. And one second before that. Yeah, the clear definition of roles also includes what the mother will do, what the father will do, what the grandfather will do, what the boys will do, what the girls will do. These things are somewhat identified, more or less. Yes, next. Then the pros continued, that is the plus points that all of you felt. There is leadership. There is one family head. So therefore everybody listens to that one older person. So this creates for harmony. Rather than having many heads together speaking so many things. Then there is celebrating festivals together. This is probably one of the enduring things that is there. There is sharing, there is happiness, there is respect for elders, and there is obedience that comes towards the words of the elders. The younger people obey the older people. There is love. There may be a car, but there is also care and shelter. And it is God-centered. Any other Plus points, yeah. There is care of the elderly. There are good habits that develop because the traditional culture is there, the elders are there to ensure that these habits are maintained. Home cooking and hot food. Simple living and high thinking. No privacy. Incidentally, no privacy comes in both pros and cons. Some of you felt no privacy was a plus, and some of you felt no privacy was a minus. So we put it in both places. Then, well, you can take rice early as well. But generally, we don't take rice early, we take it in the morning. But certainly, we rise early in a joint family, in a traditional family system. And there is a certain discipline. Everybody has to follow a certain discipline. Grandparents, which is something that most children in nuclear families don't get to see much. So grandparents, and there is good health. People are healthy. Anything else in pros? Yeah, there's knowledge, stories which the children grow up hearing. And then there's lots of guests, and you're always serving guests. And before we come to the cons, that is the minus points that you perceived about the traditional family system, I want to mention a few things as a background. Number one, it is interesting that everybody will come up with points according to his or her experience of this world, and that's natural. So whatever you have seen of family life, whatever you have experienced of family life, you will put forward in that list. So the perceptions will vary to some degree. So those who have never experienced traditional family life will not be able to relate to many of the things that those who have experience can mention here. And perhaps also similarly for modern day life. Those who are accustomed to modern day life and never seen that, they will see certain plus points in modern day life which perhaps those accustomed to traditional life may not see. There is so a difference in perception because of one's backgrounds. Also, another interesting point I have found, that despite this particular difference, even though most of you coming from Indian backgrounds have identified your idea of Indian traditional life, it may interest you to know that where I have done a similar experiment, not in so much detail, in other parts of the world, it's more or less the same. It's not something unique to or peculiar to Indian families. It is common to families across the world in all religions, in all cultures. This is an interesting point. There may be some details that may vary. You know, when I tested myself with this traditional family system, family life, what are the words that came to my mind? The first thing that came is mother. The role of the mother in the family. That's the first word that came to my mind. And I'll be honest, the second thing that came to my mind was hot food. Eating hot food and cooked at home. So some of you have raised that point also. That's a very major feature of the traditional family life. And many of the other points also. These were some of the important factors. So anyway, let's go to the cons now. The traditional family life also has its problems. It's not perfect. So when there are many family members, then there's going to be some jealousy somewhere. The other ones, the sister-in-laws, or the brother-in-law's children are brighter than my children in school, or they got a prize in the sports and my child didn't get, or so on and so forth. There will be some jealousy. There will be envy, which is more or less the same thing. Some degree of selfishness, I should get a little more than my brother-in-laws or sister-in-laws or brothers or sisters' share of the property or money or whatever it may be. There are often arguments and quarrels because they are, after all, human beings living together. Favoritism, partiality, and this is a big headache for the head of the family. Because the head of the family has to be seen to be neutral towards all the segments of the joint family. And there's always complaints that come in. You are favoring the other son or the other daughter, or other son-in-law, daughter-in-law, whatever. So this happens sometimes, or even if it doesn't happen, at least it's perceived to be happening many times. There is a certain strictness, sometimes too strict. So this was seen as a minus point, and in the discipline part it was seen as a plus point by different devotees. Stereotypes, that means you fit into a certain role, it's there. Male domination was seen by one group as a con or a minus point of traditional family life. And then no privacy was seen as a minus point. Then joint family in modern life. Yeah, this was actually my point. That overall, I'm very much in favor of a traditional family setup. Very much so. But I very much also appreciate many of the points raised here. That the traditional family life also has its problems. So we have to deal with it and see that they don't interfere with the other plus points. In the modern situation, what happens in the traditional family life situation is, because overall in the humans, in the society, there is not much of preaching about spirituality, and the religious culture, the spiritual culture has gone down a lot, and people have become very materialistic. So those who are elders in the family are also very materialistic. Therefore, their conception of religion is also materialistic. So even if they do go to temple, it's just like a ritual. So when the younger members start taking to spiritual life very seriously, they come in contact with ISKCON and they get all fired up to change the world, then the elders start becoming worried. Oh, these people are doing too much. The in-laws then become the outlaws, or so on and so forth. Or the parents then become very difficult. They say, why are you doing this? And in many cases I have seen that unless the elders are also devotees, then it creates, or at least if they are favorable, if not devotees, it creates many clashes between the younger generation who is in Krishna consciousness and the older generation who is not. And the younger generation wants to bring up their children according to Krishna conscious principles, and the older generation doesn't understand this, and they want the child to see TV, they want the child to feed the child so many things. So this causes clashes. And in these cases, actually sometimes it is better there is a modern family setup, in the sense that it is not a joint family setup, because there would be so many clashes. But it depends. If the family members are all devotees, then the traditional family setup of a joint family system is wonderful. Then all the pluses can actually come up. And as devotees, then you're expected to not be jealous, not be envious, not be selfish. Limit your quarrel and arguments. There will be some arguments, but limit it. There won't be favoritism and so on and so forth. So the ideal combination seems to be when everyone becomes a devotee in the family, and then you have a larger family setup where you also take into account the situation of the modern times that people need a little space. Then let's come to now the modern life. What is your analysis of the modern family life? The pros, that is the plus points that some of you saw, there weren't so many, so we had to look a little carefully to find the pluses. Easy access to information and Krishna conscious books. For example, you go to Vedabase, you go anywhere on the internet, and you'll find all the books, Prabhupada's books, and lots of Krishna conscious articles and websites and so on and so forth. So many, many nice things you can get in Krishna consciousness. Technology can be used. We are using it right now for Krishna consciousness. So at one time, many people can get great benefit. There is some degree of independence. Actually, minus point is too much of independence. There is some independence to do what you want to do. You're not stifled, you're not suffocated. You have your freedom to do what you would like to do. Equality, then all members are equal. That rubs the other way also. Then father, mother, daughter, son are all equal. So then as the minus side comes, then everybody is the head of the family. Then education, everybody gets a chance to be educated. Then there's better health facility in the sense of the health setup and so on, and treatment. Any other pros for okay, then there's the cons, lots of cons. Escapism. Oh, I don't know where that came. Probably I think that was under traditional. Somebody said, and there was some lack of clarity in what that meant. Anyway, we'll leave that for a moment. Then the minus points of modern family life is that it's essentially based on and promotes sense gratification. Anxiety, depression, stress are common features of modern family life. Overworked and no time. Selfish, greedy, competitive, envious. These are traits that usually emerge in many things of family life. This was an observation that devotees made. Godlessness usually is not based on spiritual culture or religious culture. It's very common to find family breakdowns, divorces, separation, and so on. A generation gap between the youngsters and the elders. We saw that yesterday in the drama. And rebellious children. You know, in the Krishna book or in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, we see the perfect example of a traditional family setup, joint family. And Krishna's queens, each of them had 10 sons. And each of these 10 sons had another 10 sons, and they all lived together. So quite a big family. And it is said that Krishna's sons would not look at Krishna in the face. That's what Shukadeva Goswami mentions. They would look down to talk to him. And whatever he said, his wish was their command. So this was how it happened. Aniruddha or Pradyumna would not look up to see Krishna. Such was the situation. Of course, lots of things have changed since 5,000 years ago. People in positions of authority sometimes are not qualified, or sometimes they have abused their position of authority, so their authority has eroded as a result of that. There is also the influence of Kali Yuga causing people to want to be more independent and faithless. That also contributes to the erosion of authority. And therefore, the structures, they begin to shake and crumble. Rebellious children. Yes, this is one. Anything else? There's lack of guidance, lack of respect and obedience towards elders. Poor food, many times is just canned food, or you just reheat in the microwave, and maybe eating out, or just quickly making up something, some sandwich, and just making do with it. Less and less of hot cooked food, basically. Actually, I'll tell you one thing before we go on. One of our devotees works in the corporate sector, and he met one lady. She was a Sri Lankan lady, and she was in charge of marketing for South Asia or something like that, for a very major multinational company that was producing breakfast cereals, breakfast item cereals and such things. And she said, now we're coming to India, this was some years ago, and our target is to make Indians stop cooking at home. This is how the modern industrial culture is. So they want people to stop cooking at home. So they'll start eating all these things which are ready-made items. Just mix it, heat it, eat it. So no need to cook. So what's happening? Actually, for their profits, they are hitting at the very roots of the family system. So they're basically taking an axe and trying to cut down the family tree. So once there's no cooking at home, then everything falls apart. Then you all go and eat independently. You come and eat whenever you like. All you have to do is just fill in a few things, make it up, and then it's done. So everybody eats separately at a different time. Some will eat out, most will eat out. So then the family doesn't stay together. The family already breaks apart. And then when the children grow up, they don't want to live with their family anymore because anyway they become too independent. So they go apart, and then it goes down the generations like this. This is how the whole family system breaks up. And then you have that situation like you have 35 types of families. That is the result. So food is a very, very important thing. Cooking of food and hot food. Ayurveda says food must be eaten hot. And that's good for health even. But heating through microwave, by the way, please don't cook on microwave. Don't eat food cooked, that's not good for health. Already that's proven now, even scientifically. The best thing, which is not possible for you in Australia, and for most people in India too, and anywhere in the world, cook on cow dung. Just for information. Not that I expect you to do it. Next is wood. Not possible for you. Then comes all the other fuels, like gas. Next is electricity. And last is microwave and all these other things. So as you go lower down, it's harmful. These things are not good, they're not natural. So at least microwave you can try to avoid. So anyway, that's a big topic, some other time. Now you're more hungry if I talk too much about food and it's just breakfast around the corner. So insecurity and loneliness, lack of proper goals, aimlessness, breakdown of trust, less love and care, lack of cleanliness. Yes, when I was in London, the youth forum, they had a little hostel type of a thing for the boys who were going to the university, because they had to otherwise go from home to the university quite a long distance. So they would stay in this hostel, that was the idea. They would do their Mangalarti, little chanting, and then go to university. So then I was there, so I was in the inauguration ceremony of this youth hostel. So before that, all the mothers, they came in a delegation, privately they wanted to meet me. separately, away from the boys. And they said, Maharaj, please, one thing, please tell them to be clean. They throw their jeans here, they throw their clothes here, they just keep things here and there. So this was they were really disturbed about it. So I told them, once they're here, they have no choice, they'll have to do it. The other boy will make sure that it's done. But the discipline is there in the larger family. In a smaller family, these are the things that happen. So even lack of cleanliness automatically comes. And as the one group said, then the shoes, the deities, all in the same room. Yes? No family unity, no care of elders. Anything more? That's it, okay. Can we bring back some of the traditional things? The pluses or the pros of the traditional? Now, having seen both, of course there may still be differences of perception. We are talking about general things. It's not that every modern family is like this. And it's not that every traditional family is like this. There will always be exceptions. But my personal observation is that modern families will not be like what is portrayed here when the tradition is still being continued and the culture is there to some degree still. But when that tradition and culture disappears, then the modern family becomes more and more like this. To the extent that tradition and culture disappears in the family, to that degree the modern family unit will resemble more and more the cons of the modern system that's set up here. There will be some elements of other things too. And to the degree that the traditional culture is maintained, and especially the God-centeredness is maintained, to that degree the minus points of the traditional setup will not be there. All this bickering and selfishness and jealousy and so on and so forth will reduce. Because human nature is hard to change, it will be there to some degree. But when there is Krishna consciousness, then it will be much better. So now the question to ask is, and by the way, when I went to other countries, they also said the same thing. What picture does it come to your mind? I asked them. When we say traditional family life, what picture? In Russia, what is the picture that comes to mind? A plump mother with an apron in front of a baking oven, bringing out fresh, hot bread. This is the image that comes into mind for many of the Russians. Traditional family life. Cooking, hot food. It may not be chapati, it's bread, because in Russia they eat bread. That's fine, but the whole thing is, the concept is eating together. It came up in all the countries. Even in Russia, in olden days they would. Now Russia, the family system has totally collapsed. I could hardly see any families in Russia. Single men and single women. And broken homes. That's all mostly I found. Very few families. So we see the social fabric of the society is crumbling. The world is in a crisis. It's not terrorism or unemployment or this or that is a major crisis. These are the real problems. Because we've forgotten Krishna consciousness, we've forgotten Krishna conscious values and traditions, so we are becoming more and more like what we see around us. And if you examine religious cultures, those families in which religious culture is maintained are more traditional. Whether they are Christian families, you will see they will all go to church on Sunday together, the family goes, they'll be carrying the children with them to go, they will eat together. Whether they're Islamic families, they will do the same. They will be eating together, living together at home nicely. Where religious culture is strong, where God-centeredness is there, the traditional family setup exists and life is much more happier. There are also problems, as we have seen. But overall, we have to weigh the pros and the cons. Yes, individuality does get stifled, privacy does get stifled, but on the other hand, there's something you get. So you have to weigh the pros and cons. And now you have to judge for yourself. Which carries more weight for you in your life? Do all these plus points carry more weight for you? Or do the minus points, or having the minus points, carry more weight for you? Are you getting the point? In the traditional family setup, there are pluses and there are minuses. Are the pluses strong enough for you to be able to tolerate the minuses? Or is it that the minuses are so strong that you'd rather give up in order to obtain what is not available in the traditional family setup, you're willing to give up the pluses of the traditional family life? That's the choice we have to make. Is it clear? Can somebody repeat what I said just to make sure that I am convinced that you understood what I said? Who would like to paraphrase what I said? Yes. Can we give a mic there? Do you understand the choice I'm asking you to make? You have to decide what kind of family life you want.
The benefit and all the pros of the traditional family, we like it most, and we also consider what's the cons of the traditional family, and we want to tolerate all the cons to attain the traditional family, to accept the traditional family. Is it our choice or not? Or we just can't tolerate the cons, that is too painful to us, so we cannot accept all those good things. We have to withdraw this and accept the modern family. This is the question to us.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. So the question to you is, which one do you want to choose? You want to choose the traditional family setup, and especially now you're adding Krishna, remember? So you're adding Krishna. So then do you want all the pluses that come up in the traditional? There will be some minuses. So if you want the pluses, then you'll have to tolerate the minuses, knowing that that is a price to pay for the pluses. Because in this world, nothing comes free. Everything has a price. So if you want love, security, shelter, stability, and all the other points that come there, then you'll have to give up a little bit of your privacy. You'll have to give up a little bit of your independence. You'll have to sacrifice something to get something. No pain, no gain. On the other hand, if you think that the modern values are more important to you, like being independent and so on and so forth, then are you prepared to accept the cons or the minus points of the modern family setup, which inevitably will come in your life? They will come. Don't think they won't come. If it doesn't come in your generation, it will be there in the next, for sure. So are you willing to have this? Or to what degree you're trying to have your foot, 1 foot here and 1 foot there? But 1 foot here, 1 foot there will not last for long. So this is the choice you have to make. Is that clear? What is the choice? Any other 2-3 devotees want to say what is the choice that I'm asking you to make? Yes? Somebody? Raise your hand, please. Someone? Yes. Okay, fine.
So the choice we have to make is weighing up the pros and cons of the traditional family setup versus weighing up the pros and cons of the modern family setup. and then analyzing that, we decide accordingly.
Yes. And what would you consider in the process?
We would consider whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and of course we have to make some sacrifice in order to achieve some gain. Nothing
Right.
comes without a price.
Right. So if you want the pluses, then you have to be willing to bear and tolerate the minuses. Right? So, any comments now? We have a few minutes, just 5 minutes. I don't want, because hungry people are angry people, so. And I don't want the hot food to become cold food, prasadam. Yes, no, yeah, that's clarified. So, think about this point. This is a major crisis in the world now. It leads, if you think about it deeply, it goes deeper and deeper. And this is why now in European countries like Sweden, Norway, even in Australia, the local populations where this culture doesn't exist, their birth rate is declining. In many cases it goes negative. Why? Because the traditional family setup doesn't exist. People are independent, both are working, they don't have the time and energy to look after the children. And then it takes too much trouble to give birth to a child and raise a child. All of you are experiencing. So much pain it takes, so much trouble to raise one child, what to speak of 2 and 3. So they'd rather not have that. They want their independence, they want their sense gratification, so no children. So birth rates go down, therefore the Australian government says for every child we'll give you extra whatever, $600 or this and that. How long will that go on? And people will misuse it because they'll get $600, something and all sorts of things will happen. So just try to see where it is going to lead our society. And it is the communities, those people have children where the traditional culture is still remaining to some degree. Otherwise, where this culture goes away, then the couples, they don't want to have children because it's too much of a botheration. They have their life, their career, their this, their that. And then finally it comes to a point, even marriage is bothersome. Just live together without getting married. Because once you get married, the more you become more self-centered and selfish, you're only looking for your personal gains, your sense gratification. If anything interferes with that, you want to cut your relationship with that person. So because there's no tolerance, there's no mutual understanding, no patience. It's not that couples in the old days didn't have problems with each other. It's not that natures of all the couples matched always. Hardly ever. But they adjusted, they tolerated, they went on. Because they understood that this is what life is all about. You have to adjust, you have to tolerate, you have to manage. And then as the children came, then they realized now we are not living for ourselves, we are living for our children. So they would set aside their own problems just for the sake of the children. But now when these other centers of your life don't exist, God doesn't exist in your life, children don't exist in your life, a larger family doesn't exist in your life, there's just you and your partner and a little problem and you part ways. So even though the independence and the other benefits that the modern life offers may seem very attractive, because that's what the modern educational system teaches us, that's what the culture teaches us as values that are very important. But then see the price you have to pay now and the price the society will have to pay as the time goes on. And this is something I keep saying in practically many classes. It's some years ago, a survey, I mentioned this at the university class at NSW University. Some survey was conducted many years ago about the problems that people face. In Germany, which is technologically one of the most advanced countries in the world, known for their precision in technology, anything that comes from Germany, it's pakka, it's good. They have everything. And the biggest problem the people faced, according to the survey, was that they were lonely. Loneliness. See, that was one of the things you all identified also with modern family life. That same survey was done in Australia. And in Australia, the most common fear or problem that came up was that people were nervous that they would lose their partner or their spouse, that the relationship will break up. This fear, the greatest problem that Australians faced in that survey. It's a common thing happening now world over. So the more you move away from the traditional setup, in other words, the Krishna conscious setup, the more there is trouble. We have to see that together with this problem about the elders now having not been Krishna conscious and the youngsters becoming Krishna conscious. That's a little problem area. And in some cases actually probably it's better they remain in a nuclear family, because at least they're able to do Krishna conscious nicely. But they should also take guidance from elders, but the children miss out. The children miss out on the grandparents. If the grandparents had been Krishna conscious, how nice it would have been. And also it becomes a strain on young parents looking after children. They have to manage everything on their own, overworked, less time. See, all these things come up, even if you're devotees. But to safeguard your Krishna consciousness and that of your children, you may have to take this step, that may be. But overall, try to visualize a situation where we can have this setup. Then how nice the society will be. And now, in the next session, we're going to try to look at all the issues that you identified in relationship to this perspective. Had you had this kind of a model of family life, what would have been the issues? And so on. So we'll talk about that when we meet again. That is at what time? 11 o'clock, right? So when we meet again for the last session, we'll speak about that. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.